Welcome to Behind the Tools. Here's Tradify CEO and your host, Michael Steckler.
Hi everyone, welcome to another edition of the Tradify Behind the Tools podcast. Delighted this week actually to have two people I've spoken to before on their podcast, the air conditioning podcast. Look it up if you get a chance to do that. So Brad and Shane Rawson from Morphett Air. Have I pronounced the company name right, by the way?
Yeah,
cool.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Who are based in Adelaide, who unfortunately, those of you that follow the news have been in a lockdown, I think soon to finish lockdown, which is good to hear. And for those international listeners, Adelaide is, I think, the fifth biggest Australian city, the biggest city in South Australia, if I'm not mistaken.
That's probably about right.
Yeah, cool. So welcome on board. Great to have you on the show.
Thank you. Thanks for having us.
Mate, thanks for having us. We're thrilled to be here.
No, thrilled to have you. It's like a lovely day in Adelaide today, by the way, in the background there.
Yeah, it's actually not too bad at the moment. Yeah,
still cold. Don't be fooled. It's sun's shining.
Yeah. What do you think of as cold? Just out of interest.
We've had some quite cool weather over the last couple of weeks, haven't we, Brad?
Yeah, probably. It's been hovering around the 14 mark.
Celsius.
13, 14.
Yeah.
Freezing.
Yeah, freezing. So at night time, at night time gets down a bit cold. It's like, I don't know, maybe
10,
8.
Oh, 8
to 10.
That's right next to Dooner.
It depends what you're acclimatized to. So you're presumably, there's a lot of your business more for people cooling their homes in your area.
No, a bit of both actually.
A bit of both.
So because we've got the reverse cycle side of it. So yeah, the heating and the cooling. So if it's hot or cold, we're busy.
You're busy all year round. All year round. That's fantastic. So maybe you want to
We
start.
don't like the in-between weather.
You don't like the what?
The in-between weather. We don't like the in-between weather.
Yeah.
Oh, that's no good. You like extremes.
Extremes.
Well, there's plenty of those coming at the moment, unfortunately. Cool. So look, maybe start. One of the things I was really fascinated about. So this is you're a family business. You work together. You've been a family business for many years, more than 40 years, almost 50 years, I think, as a business. Morphett Air. Maybe want to give us the background of how the business was started and how you sort of got into it.
Yeah, well, it's 50 years this year.
Oh wow! Congrats.
Thank you. Mum and Dad started the business back in '71 at a suburb called Morphett Vale, which is in the southern suburbs of Adelaide. Back then, it was back in those days that it was really not the competition they have what we have now.
Right.
And Dad was out sort of doing the service calls and the repairs and the installs, and Mum was working from home, doing the invoicing and taking calls, etc., from our home, Morphett Vale,
and changing my nappy at the same time.
Yeah. I still do that, Brad.
Yeah, that's right.
But yeah, look, they just the business grew. They started to get more sort of maintenance contracts and things and connections here and there, and they eventually bought moved into a premises down at Plimpton, which is more sort of around like central area. And then the name just stuck. They decided to keep the name and just run with it. So so that's where we are today.
That's fantastic. And how's it working together as family?
Terrible.
Just
we get on pretty well.
Yeah.
And
look,
go on.
I was going to say it has challenges. There's no doubt about that. Anyone who works with a family, especially working with Brad, it's tough at times. But no, look. To be honest, we all get along famously. We really do, inside of work and outside of work, and I guess we all sort of appreciate each other's strengths. Yeah. We also recognise, where we're not too strong. But we all sort of scaffold each other and prop each other up to sort of get the job done, sort of thing.
I think you're really lucky. It's really cool to be able to work with family like that. And did you always both want to be in the business, having sort of seen your parents build it over time? Was that always a sort of conscious thing you wanted to do?
No, not at all. I still don't know what I want to do when I grow up. I sort of got into it because I didn't know what I wanted to do, and obviously there was a availability there to move in, do an apprenticeship.
Yeah.
And so yeah, that's what I did, and I'm trying, but yeah.
How are you treated as an apprentice when it's family?
Well, I was working under, we had tradies working for us.
Yeah.
So I think at the time there was about 3 or 4 different guys. We had a Sparky and a couple of Fridgies. And yeah, I used to cop it. So, and it was a bit hard because I was on both sides. I was both sides of the camp. You know, I was the tradie with the guys, and I was also on the family side. So they always used to give me shit for being, you know, oh, you're the son, your boss's son, you know. So it was a bit hard in that way, but yeah, we got through it.
And where's the business at? Where's the business at now in terms of sort of staff and where you're at today?
Did you want to go there, Shane?
We've sort of we've kind of changed a little bit the way we're sort of the direction we're heading in. Where the business previously has had lots of employees, Mum and Dad got to the stage where they were getting a bit older and decided they wanted to start to scale things back a bit. I was off doing other jobs outside of the business. Brad was contracting to the business, and so they sort of started to scale things back more than anything. And they started to head towards using more subcontractors. Right. And so the business sort of scaled back, but then I came back to the business and we decided to try and build things up again. So I guess our team of subbies grew, and there's been lots of changes with our subcontractors over that time as well. But now we're at that stage again where we're looking to pivot again and potentially look at employing more staff again. So.
Oh, great! That's great to hear. And are you mainly commercial, residential, or both?
Both.
Yeah.
Build up again as the commercial side.
Yeah.
Previously, Mum and Dad were very focused around the commercial side, weren't they, Brad? They had lots of commercial type maintenance agreements and contracts. And as they started to pull things back, they decided to sort of reduce those numbers. But we're looking to go the other way again.
Go the other way, get back into it. That's great. And is it challenging? How do you find it hiring people? Are you now doing everything? You got installers, and you talked about Sparkies and everything else. Is the business, are you subcontracting most of those functions, or are you looking to hire sort of permanent staff to do it across everything?
Yeah, we're mainly using subcontractors, which is we're lucky we've got a really good couple of teams of contractors to do our installations and so forth. Yeah. We had our own Sparky just up until last week, and he's moved on, so we'll be looking for another Sparky shortly. He's in a van, but mainly the contractor side. And I must say, it is a lot easier to deal with contractors, I find, when you've got a good relationship with them. They know that we will be giving them their quantity of work, and that we pay them regularly, and we've got a good relationship. So I find it's actually a lot easier than employing, but that's just how we've found it over the last few years anyway.
And I presume you built a decent relationship with those, presumably the same subcontractors over a period of time. So it's almost like a full-time employee, just with a different relationship.
100%,
Yeah,
it just makes it easier. It works well for them because they know where their work's going to be coming from. They can look after their cash flow because we're going to be paying them regularly. So it works well for them, works well for us.
Yeah, fantastic.
But unfortunately,
and I think
they're a bit more expensive.
Yes.
Than an employee. Well, I think.
But we also try to pay them well too, because we want to hold on to them. There's no sense in trying to be a cheap ass and then going off doing their own thing, thinking, well, we can get, do work for someone else. But no, I think that's probably the one thing that we've tried to do is pay them well, better than the industry standard, but also regularly. So they've got that constant cash flow, which is important.
Yeah. And do you think you'll change that over time, or is that the plan to sort of stick with subcontractors even as you grow and get more of those commercial contracts?
We're definitely
I'd like personally.
We're definitely moving towards putting more of our own people on, but at the same time, we still want to be able to have our current subcontractor list that we've got. So ideally, we want to keep feeding them and expand out and have more of our own guys as well.
And how hard is it to find good people that can do what you need them to do in your space, even whether they're subcontractors or full-time employees?
Yeah, it's pretty difficult, particularly we have the ducting side of things with the residential market. Yeah, and it's always difficult to find guys that can do an installation and do it without having faults and water leaking through someone's roof and all that sort of thing. So that's where I think the subcontractors do work, because they know that if they muck up the job, it's going to come back and fall on them. So but it is very difficult. But they are out there. They've got guys are out there. It's just a matter of finding them. Yeah,
and I think that's probably one thing that we've kind of learning is that you need to be looking all the time, consistently. Keeping the feelers out there and letting people know that we're actively looking, because you don't want to have that scenario where the ideal candidate pops up and you're not ready for it, and you've lost them. So I guess that's where we're trying to structure our business at the moment, to be prepared for those opportunities.
Yeah, what does that look like for you in terms of hiring? How do you put the feelers out? How do you find those people? Do you advertise, or is it predominantly sort of word of mouth?
Well, that's traditionally in the past we've done the ads on the online portals like your Seeks and what have you. Yeah. And I think that a lot of the time there you're basically sifting through resumes and applicants that potentially aren't the right fit, and it's very, very time consuming. So and we've also gone through agencies before where they do the hard yards for you. So I think it's still important. You've got to sort of advertise and have those ads running, but I think it could also be more through, like, even the subcontractors themselves. They might know of someone who's looking for work, and there's currently the job that they're not particularly happy with, or for whatever reason. So I think the word of mouth is still a good option.
Yeah, internal as well. So if you've got someone working for you in that position, they quite often know someone else who they think is a good fit. Yeah. And perhaps they can bring someone on board, and there might be a bit of an incentive for them to do that. After if the person stays on for a particular amount of time, then they might have an incentive to bring that person in. Right.
And you get that sort of credibility and trust that comes straight in with that. Yeah, and have you hired apprentices at all, or considered that, or is that a path you take?
In the past we have. I was contracting to Morphett, so I had my own business where I was just contracting to Morphetts, and I think I had about three apprentices over a few years. Yeah, and I actually got those through an organisation called Peer, which are you pay a certain amount for the apprentice per week, as a one fee covers everything.
Right.
Like a recruiting agency.
Yeah. So they actually, I suppose, distribute out the apprentices to different organisations, and they can move around as well. But I ended up having my guys have tended to stick with me, so I had a couple go all the way through, and then I had a couple, do a good amount of time with me and move on. But was the way I did it. It's probably not the most economical way, but it is a good way of doing it if you're not sure, 100% sure of, your I suppose, the continuity of work.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then sort of segueing, another thing that interested me about your business is you've got solar power as well. How big a business is that for you versus the other stuff? Is that a focus?
It's not a huge focus for us. It's I suppose in that space we could do more advertising, but it's more of a sideline, in between type thing, just to fill the gaps, I suppose. And in the April, May, that's when we need to fill some gaps, and that tends to do that a bit. There's always you could always do with more, but that's not a huge focus.
Do you see it changing? I mean, one of the things I'm interested in, if I was talking to a UK plumber, we'd be talking about gas boilers and what happens in whatever that number is, 10, 15, 20, 30 years when they get phased out, what replaces it, how they're preparing for that, and many just aren't preparing because they can see enough work for quite some time in servicing all those existing boilers and existing homes. Do you ever think about that stuff in terms of how things might change over time and what that means for your business?
Yeah, I think so. We've seen a lot of changes in our time, but and with the diversification, obviously, you come across different fields and so forth that you start looking into. So I've lost track now.
Well, the diversification has been important for us. Where we were solely doing air conditioning for so many years, as Brad said, we had those downtimes, during sort of April, May, June, and we're virtually sitting around twiddling our fingers, thinking where do we go from here? Suddenly winter kicks in and you're up and about, we thought, well, this is not the way it's, particularly when you've got employees, you can't have those downtimes. So we would, as Brad said, looking to fill those voids, and that's where we sort of diversified and looked at the options of solar. So and that's been great for our business, and having the electrical side of the business has been great too, because you don't have the season demand like you do with air conditioning, and even the plumbing, and they're all kind of, they have to be a good fit for your current business too, and they've got to complement each other, and we found that they all seem, those different trades seem to be working well for us. Do you see that growing? Do you think you'll put more investment into that? Do you think that'll grow over time? Is there a demand for it? I mean, you've got the right weather for it. In terms of South Australia,
it's definitely going to be a thing of the future. But I think it's not so much. We've had a huge influx of solar coming into our country. Just about everyone's got a solar system on their roof, and we're getting to the point now where we are replacing a lot of the old systems. And that technology is changing so much. We're going to batteries, obviously the Tesla batteries, and there's others around as well. And then there's a new technology for hydrogen cells, battery cells. So that's just starting now I think I was talking to a guy the other day, they installed their first one as a tester. And that's huge, Once that comes in, that's a game changer,
How do you get up to speed with all that? Just out of interest, is that just talking to people, or do you intentionally go out there and find out what could be next and make sure that you're tooled up for it?
I'll always keep my ear to the ground, I suppose, and see what's going on. And also just talking to a lot of guys that are in the know. That's probably, and then if something sparks up, I'll start doing a bit of investigation into it and see whether and how soon, and whether it's worth looking into at the moment and things like that. So we haven't done a hell of a lot in the battery space yet. We've sort of been waiting on the technology to I suppose become a bit more economical for people to do.
Yeah.
So we're probably just around the corner from getting into the batteries, and then obviously the technology changes from there.
And I think also that we, going back to what you said, Michael, about advertising, ramping that side of the business up, I guess we're not out to try to compete with some of these guys that are absolutely smashing it here. They've made really solid businesses for themselves, and we're not really in a position to try and compete with them. We would rather service our existing client base and offer it as an add-on service. We've already got that database of clients, 50 years worth of clients, and we've got that element of trust there, and they, when they realise that you're actually doing electrical, you're doing some solar, and you're doing some plumbing, they sort of say, well, we trust this, we trust them as a business. Why not just get a quote from them as well? So that's kind of how it's kind of that, isn't it, Brad? That's sort of the avenue we're kind of heading with the solar,
and with all the different technologies and so forth, and different aspects of different areas that you could go into. You've got to also remember your core business as well. So you don't want to diversify to the point where you've thinned yourself out that fine that you can't actually focus and do and really do a good job in the areas that you should be doing. You could spread yourself too thin, I suppose.
Yeah, I know. It's a really good point. Yeah, no, I agree. Yeah. And like you say, you've got some incumbent competition that just do solar, right? Some of those companies, that's all right. They do. And so, that's a tough thing. Yeah. And then I first met you guys on your podcast, which I was sort of going to lead to next. So I mentioned it up front, the air conditioning podcast. Should be the air conditioning and sometimes solar podcast, maybe. But,
maybe a bit of plumbing. And
a bit of plumbing, electrical, and
roofing, painting.
And it's a great podcast. I listened to your last episode. I like the first 8 minutes, which I was sort of, I thought it was admirable that you kept in, which was you sort of swearing at your computer. Was just something the general gist of it. But talk me through. It's what gives it character. Talk me through. What made you set that up on the YouTube channel? Like, what prompted you to do that? Was it initially a consumer thing, like just to help people who were trying to figure out what air conditioning unit to get? Was it that the approach, or was it more than that?
Uploading the podcast to YouTube was a kind of a secondary thought, because with our YouTube channel for Morphett Air has been up and going for about 7 years. Yeah. And so we already had the audience there, and I thought it was a good fit to upload, in addition to our tutorials that we have on there, to have the podcast on there, because
also as part of it,
audience, it's part of it. So. And
the tutorials, though, were they aimed at consumers originally?
Yeah, it was all kind of
everything, I think. It was mainly consumers.
We were just sort of getting the same sort of questions, the FAQs coming through that prompted us. And this, like I said, this going back 7 years ago. And we thought, well, instead of sort of having to go through these same spiels over and over, wouldn't it be nice just to be able to send a link to someone? Right. And one of those that has been extremely popular. I mean, it's often the really simple videos that are the most popular. There's one that we did of Brad just resetting an aircon unit, just doing a reset, hard reset. And we whacked it up there, and now it's had, over 500,000 views. And so we get constantly, messages from people saying, thanks, I tried to, go through the manual, couldn't really make head and tail out of it. And your video was so self-explanatory and easy to follow. People loved it. So it's been good. But so I think that, going back to your question, I think the uploading the podcast to that was just a good fit for that reason. Another audience, I suppose.
Yeah, it was the podcast, so the YouTube channel, and we talked about this before we actually came on, that you've had 2 million downloads now, right, which is amazing over that period. It's a big number, high engagement. Was the podcast more about the industry, or were you still thinking that there might be some consumers that would listen?
Yeah, I think that, and again, this goes back, probably six years ago. I've always really enjoyed podcasts and reading and just learning and different things. And one day, I don't know why, I was sitting there thinking, wonder what they've got in relation to air conditioning. And I had a look and I couldn't really find much. There might have been this odd episode here and there that, might have been related to a home renovation podcast or something. And I thought, well, maybe we should put one together and see what comes of it. So I sat down at a computer and smashed out an episode, but then got cold feet. I thought, no one in their right mind is going to want to listen to this. And it wasn't until a year or two ago that I went to a seminar and they said, "Oh, podcasting's a new thing, and you've got to get into it, this and that." And I came back to Brad and I said, "Look, I think we should give this a crack. Let's just roll the dice, see what happens, and if we get laughed out of the place, well, so be it. We've got to have a go." So we did it, and we have not had no negative responses whatsoever. It's just all been positive, and everyone's been so supportive and awesome.
Yeah, it's great. It's really cool. And do you get much business from I always ask everyone that's sort of in this game that does YouTube channels or Instagram or whatever it might be, or podcasts. Do you get much business? Does it help with business at all in terms of people looking at you, probably more your YouTube channel?
Yeah, more the YouTube. YouTube. We weren't sure whether the podcast was like which direction it was sort of got to go in. But the biggest responses we had was from tradies and guys in the industry. Yeah. So that was kind of where we thought, well, we've kind of niched it down a lot to follow that lead. But I kind of, in a way, regret it a little bit now. I think we've probably niched it down too much. There's no reason why we couldn't open that up again, I suppose, to other trades, and make that as part of the show. But it was where we started, and it's kind of the path we followed.
Yeah, yeah. And how do you find guests? How do you decide what you're going to talk about and how you're going to approach it in between doing the day job?
Yeah, that's an interesting one. We started off. We didn't actually know that we were going to have guests, did we, Shane?
No.
You two were going to talk to? You were just going to talk to each other about it?
Yeah, we were just going to talk, and then we went, we should probably talk to someone else, So we ended up, I don't know. I think we just started throwing some names around of people in the industry that we already knew and had a relationship with, and we started putting it out there, and gradually, some of the guys work for us. We do work with other people that have come on, and then we've had people contact us, as time's gone on. From overseas and the like, and come on, let's do it.
Yeah, it's really that's really
quite
really
well,
cool.
Yeah.
And
I think that was the thing behind the podcast, Michael, was that Brad and I, we always said that we're not the experts.
Yeah,
we wanted to get the experts in and get their opinions, but it was just another platform to talk about the industry, because there's not really a lot. There's not a lot of discussion around it, apart from now more recently with Facebook groups and things like this. But aside from that, there wasn't really much to get the conversation flowing. So we just thought, well, this works well for us because we can learn a ton of stuff from other people as well.
Yeah, and we have.
Which is that's cool. That's really cool. And as you branch out into more trying to get more commercial work, what's the approach there in terms of winning business? It's one thing I'm always interested in. Is that a word of mouth thing again, or are you going to have to knock some doors down?
We're probably going to have to knock some doors down. I think in the past we probably took for a little bit for granted that we had a fairly large selection of maintenance contracts, I suppose, and we let it go, let it whittle down. I suppose over the years, which is probably a fairly big mistake. Looking back at it now, we should have really clung on to those customers, because they are really your bread and butter. So we're going to probably have to knock some doors down, and it's a bit of word of mouth as well, getting into to talk to the right people.
And I think that's also what Mum and Dad did exceptionally well, was they could see the value in those contracts, and they really nurtured them well, and they worked on them. And I guess us coming into the business, they were already there. So we didn't appreciate, well, I personally probably didn't appreciate the value that it took to acquire those relationships and those connections. And then the ongoing nurturing of those and making sure that everyone's happy all the time and treating them like their goal. Once you've got them, you've got to hold on to them for dear life. And I guess when Mum and Dad started to sort of step back from the business a bit, we kind of didn't run with it. We were sort of a bit, as Brad said, a little bit complacent at times. And so they started to, and then we had, some contractors that were working for us that, allegedly have taken some of that work with them as well. So, so which hasn't helped, but, we recognise those faults, and we've got things in place now to rebuild again. So
yeah, well, any advice you'd give anyone else who's sort of, because I think that's a common thing that can happen in terms of whether taking for granted is the right phrase, but nurturing that kind of existing customer base, to your point, which I think many of our listeners and our customers certainly have those types of businesses where once you've got someone locked in, it's just if you keep treating them the right way, it's a very easy way to have a sort of long-term kind of recurring revenue. Yeah, is there anything you would have done differently, or you look back and go, things you would do in the future?
I think they say that your existing customers are your cheapest customers, and that's probably fairly true.
It is very true.
Yeah.
And I think the diversification side of it, I wish we'd had done that sooner rather than leave it till now. Just so that we could really smooth out those waves. And I think just really working that database, and going back to people and as Brad said, that they are your cheapest customer. Everyone kind of gets bogged down with new customer acquisition all the time, placing ads here and Google ads and Facebook campaigns and radio advertising, of which we're guilty of ourselves. And you kind of forget about those people that you've already spent the time with. They're already your customer. But I think going back and looking after those people, keeping that constant communication up, I think is absolutely paramount to
and that's not an easy thing to do either, by the way.
No.
To keep on revisiting those customers and keep in touch and working out ways of doing that. That's where you guys and people like yourselves come into it, I suppose, and give you those tools to do that sort of thing.
Yeah. Well, do it also, I think, in an automatic way, because I think that's part of the problem is you either put a reminder in, right? But when you're on the job, on the tools all day, you get home in the evening, you're tired, you don't want to be sitting there thinking, okay, I've got to go through a database and get these email addresses and send them an email. What do I put in the email? You want an automatic thing that sort of, thanks people for their business, reminds them when to pay, all those types of things that I think we kind of take for granted a little bit. But it's an important part of
the automation side of it is a huge thing.
Yes. Yeah.
We're sort of going through that with our business at the moment, trying to automate as much as possible. And those sort of follow-up messages and all that sort of thing is all part of that.
And how do you run that? Do you have someone in the back office that does that?
Well, I think we've all had a bit of a try at it, I suppose. We've also had marketing people that we've paid to sort of help us to do that sort of thing, and but yeah, it really comes down to, I think Samantha in our office, she does most of that side of it. Yeah. As in setting up the automated message to go out in another 12 months. So pretty much every job now that we do is going to have a follow-up message in 12 months' time. Time to get your unit serviced, this or that, whatever it might be. But yeah, you really need to have someone in marketing that you can say, well, what do you think we should be sending out on a regular basis? Something that's not going to piss people off.
Yeah. Oh, that stuff. I mean, I think it's anyone that's in boilers or HVAC or whatever, it's those reminders that say, hey, it's 11 months. In a month, you should get it serviced or looked at. I mean, people actually enjoy those type of messages because it's useful. You know, you need to get it's no different to a car service email. Right, you've done X thousand miles, it's due a service, book it in. I'd much rather that than having to look at the clock and think, oh, does this need a service or oil service or a so I think it makes I think bringing that to the trades is really sort of quite game changing actually in terms of not just the amount of time it will save you, but also the relationship with your end customer, which you've just you referred to is really important.
Exactly.
I think the other thing that we're looking to do too, and that's I guess where the podcast came from and the YouTube channel, was really to try to just offer something where you're not beating someone's door down and asking, buy now. It's about just feeding people some information, some really helpful information, so that they think, that what they did there was actually really helpful to us. And we're not buying at the moment, but when we do, we'll actually keep them in mind. We're doing a bit of a Facebook campaign at the moment, running a couple of ads, just because everyone at the moment here and other states of Australia are in lockdown, you haven't got access to, not everyone's doing the servicing and the repairs at the moment. Lots of people are working from home and they're not out and about. So people like in this industry are quite scarce at the moment. So we've been doing this campaign where, we send out a video. It might be the reset your aircon video. It might be how to self-diagnose, just things like that might get people through this period. And hopefully at the end of that, they might come to us and say, you know what, we actually followed that video. It worked. We're grateful. Next time we want a service done or we'll get something done, we'll come to you guys for some, as a customer sort of thing, a paying customer. So I think that's where we're kind of heading at the moment, trying some of that stuff.
I think it's something really great about doing that type of stuff. And I do think it builds really good reputation. I think when you phone someone up and they help you at the end of it, it's like, well, I'm not going to give you work, but you've helped me. You really do make a very, very strong note of that person or that company. I think that's really, really powerful. And actually everyone I've spoken to, initially when I say, have you built a YouTube channel, Instagram following, whatever it is that for business? They've all initially said, no, doesn't drive business. But when you say, well, how much of the business that you've won though recently have people looked at the channel? They're like, oh, actually, yeah, they've all looked at it. And there's, a couple of reasons. One, they see the quality of the work that you do because you're being very open about what you post and all that stuff. And two, I think to your point, they've seen you because they've got an issue and they're trying to fix that issue. And then they remember, oh, actually, if I need a bigger thing like a new unit, I'm going to call that company. So I think it's a really, really useful thing. And actually so many consumers now go straight to YouTube when they have an issue. Like your example that you used is an obvious one, right? Sometimes the most simplest stuff. And I think it's actually because the manuals are quite complex, overly complex. And actually looking for a YouTube video takes half the time and gives you the answer and you get someone demoing it there. So it's a pretty powerful tool. Yeah.
And it's not always, all those sorts of things aren't always going to work, but for the consumer, but at the end of the day, they've gone, oh, these guys tried to help me. Didn't work, but maybe I need to give them a call and book a service call in.
Absolutely. Cool. Great.
That works quite well,
So we always, I feel like this has been really, really helpful. It's great. I mean, it's fantastic to see you building the business and now going after the commercial stuff. And I love the podcast and everything you're doing on YouTube. I think it's really powerful. And I think the more people that pick, I mean, you call it a niche, but it's a pretty big one, right? Globally. I think that's one of the other fascinating things about this stuff is everyone I speak to, whether they're in the UK, Australia, or the US, there is actually quite a big connection of tradespeople that talk to each other via these platforms, whether if they're electricians or HVAC, whatever else it might be, which I think is quite powerful and quite an interesting trend that we've seen. One of the things we do at the end of the podcast, we ask a series of questions. I say I feel like we stole it from you because I'm sure that's what you do at the end of your. I know it's what you do. At the end. Our questions are a bit different. Yours are more casual. I think it'd be fair to say ours are a bit more serious, but. I'd love to finish
some sound effects like fart sounds.
No, we've got no sound effects. We don't have the. Hey, we haven't got that. We haven't got your marketing. But I actually no. We've got a very good marketing team, but we don't have sound effects. But I will give that. We got your. Well, actually, I say that we have Shane. We have got your aviary, which sounds wonderful where you are. Is that an aviary or is that just the local wildlife?
I think it's just
it's just gone.
No aviaries here.
Oh, it's very nice. Maybe we need some sun. It's dark here. I could do with some sunshine. All right, so I'm going to ask you the question. The first one, that'll be interesting because you've sort of gone into the family business, not necessarily by a direct route, but if you did pick another trade, if you weren't the air conditioning guys, what would you be?
I reckon I'd do, if I had my time again, I'd be an electrician. Because it's actually an easier path now to go for a dual trade if you're a Sparky to start with.
Yeah.
So that's probably what I'd do. Either that or a male gigolo. I'm not sure.
I think you might have some more success in being a Sparky.
I was going to say, you'll still be broke, Brad. You'll still be broke.
I haven't got much of a database for the other one.
I think, I don't know what I would have done, Michael. I really get a kick out of doing the editing stuff, as my son does. He does all that stuff as well. But maybe something to do with TV or film or something. The back end stuff. Behind the scenes. That would have been really cool. I would think.
It's never too late.
No, true.
That's right. Yeah.
You've got that YouTube and the podcast going. It's great. Okay, and then. When you're back on site and hope things are opening up and everything, what would be your favourite on-site lunch?
You can't go past the good old HJs.
Hungry Jacks.
Hungry Jacks.
Stinks of Brad, that does.
Yeah.
I don't know. I'd probably say, I reckon a Subway or maybe just a pie. Balfour's pie with sauce.
Balfour's pie with sauce, okay. Yeah. Cool, all right, good. Go-to tool brand. Do you have a favourite unit, by the way, when you're fixed? I know you've got Panasonic and other units on your website, but do you have a preferred brand?
Probably. We'd probably stick with the ones that we are using now, and that'll be Panasonic is one of our favourite brands at the moment. Mitsubishi Electric and Hitachi, but they all have their own little ifs and buts. Yeah, that's probably our go-to at the moment. Yeah. And
then tools? You had one tool to pick.
We're talking batteries.
Oh, you want to talk batteries? You can talk batteries. Yeah.
Battery tools. I'd go Makita.
Oh yeah, no, they're very popular. Yeah.
Or Milwaukee, I think. Yeah.
I think Milwaukee's been slightly more popular so far, but
yeah.
I've got I don't have an array of tools like Brad does. He's got a van full stocked filled. I'm not that lucky, but I'd have to say I've got a couple of Makitas.
I thought you were going to say you're a Ryobi man.
Well, I do like a Ryobi. I'm not going
to lie. All right, and then I know you fellas like your sport. If you could go to a live sporting event when things are opened up, what would it be?
I'd have to say footy. I just love going to a game, Adelaide Oval, wherever, just soaking up that atmosphere, particularly when your side's winning, just the electricity just builds. It's just awesome. So I'd have to say that.
Yeah. Let's say footy and maybe the Adelaide 500 when it before it got canned.
And are you watching the Olympics? I sort of timestamped this podcast. We're in the middle of the Olympics, the start of the Olympics, really.
Yeah, well, there's nothing else on, is there?
No, there's not. Australia's early haul's looking pretty good. They're quite high up the table.
Yeah. Going nicely, yeah.
Girls swimming, they've won a few goals already, so which is very nice.
Yeah.
And nice to hear that Brisbane got the 2032, which was very nice too.
Yeah. Oh, you'd be able to go. That'd be great. Yeah.
Cool. I should be primed and ready to go by then.
And the last question, I mean, you speak to lots of tradies and tradespeople on your podcast, but if there's anyone you think that we should have on the show next, who would it be?
Over to you, Shane.
Well, there's probably a few. We've had so many great guests on our show, but there's a couple that I think would be a really good fit for you. And one of them is, with only a recent one, is Airfridge Australia. We spoke to Ben Biffle, who's the state manager at Airfridge Australia, a national wholesaler for air conditioning and refrigeration.
Yeah.
And he was good, really good guy to talk to. Probably from an industry perspective, I'd maybe suggest Kim Lindberg from ARMA, which is the Australian Refrigeration Mechanics Association. So she's she's got knows what's going on in the industry, and she's very, very well educated around that. So they're doing some really good things, but also from a small business perspective, well, when I say small, a business perspective, there's a couple of guys that we interviewed very early in season 1, and it was Smarter Air. They're based in Brisbane, I think, Brad, weren't they?
Yeah, I think so, yeah.
Phil Crawley and Davis Rowe. So there's a couple of suggestions.
Great. It's fantastic suggestions. Cool.
That'd be good. Yeah.
Fantastic.
Awesome.
Well, this has been great. Really great to have you on the show. Really appreciate your candor around the business and what you're doing. It sounds really cool. And I think it's great that you work as a family and still get on, which is nice and useful. And congrats on the YouTube channel and the podcast. I think it's been really cool to see you doing that. And I think it's actually good that there's sort of this altruism behind it as well, which I think is what makes it more effective. And that seems to be the running theme through everyone I speak to, sort of goes after that stuff. So that's really cool as well. So look, really appreciate it. It was lovely to speak to you both again. And
it's been great.
Hopefully you'll be out of lockdown fairly soon.
Yeah. And I'd just like to say thank you to Tradify, because very good friends of the show, and you guys kindly sponsored our show in season 1, so we're eternally grateful, Michael.
No, it was our pleasure, absolute pleasure. Cool. And then, do you want to tell everyone where they can find you, just out of interest, so I don't get the URLs or the air conditioning podcast? It's easy to find.
I always test Brad at the end of every show on that, but it does all right. But airconditioningpodcast.com is the address, Michael, and then just the socials, Twitter and Facebook and Insta. Yeah,
cool. And you type in the air conditioning podcast, if you're in a podcast app, it comes up top listing anyway.
Nice. Oh, and YouTube. Don't forget YouTube.
Don't forget YouTube. Yeah. Cool. All right. Well, look, appreciate it. Enjoy the rest of your day. And thanks everyone for listening. And as always, listening or watching, as always, if you could rate, review and give us feedback, we would greatly appreciate it. Thanks everyone. Cheers.
Awesome.
And that brings us to the end of this episode. Behind the Tools is brought to you by Tradify, job management software for your trade business. If you enjoyed the podcast, let us know by leaving a review, and be sure to tell your mates about it. Email behindthetools@tradifyhq.com if you or someone you know would be keen to join the show as a guest.